Hello, I'm here with Professor Roy Jones, who is Professor of Geography at Curtin University of Western Australia. Hi Roy.
Hi, pleased to be here.
Now Roy, you are a historical geographer, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, could you tell us explain a bit what an historical geographer is or does?
An historical geographer is interested in how and why places change, and the impact of these changes on the people and on the places and the environments themselves.
Okay.
Yes.
And how is that translated in your research? So how have you...
Well, to give one example, a remote coastal area in the north of Western Australia, because of its amazing dugongs and other animal species and geology, has been nominated for World Heritage. There was a tiny community of people up there who fished and sort of herded livestock and this kind of thing, and were cut off from the rest of Australia pretty much. And now the area is opened up for tourism. It's got a lot of people controlling, what you can do, where you can go to protect the environment. And the designation of World Heritage really created stress and trauma, to the point where the kids of the environmental managers in the primary school were getting hassled in the playground. So I was involved with some colleagues to look at the community reactions to the World Heritage designation, because another place further up the coast was also going to be designated. So the impact of that change was a whole series of social problems. If they're going to designate more World Heritage areas, which is what's happening around the world now, how can you minimise them?
I see. I mean, when you talk about this site becoming a World Heritage site, that obviously relates into some of the things that our students do here at Gloucestershire. Some of our students often look at heritage, or the heritage industry, or the nature of the actual terminology and theories of what is heritage and how that differs or relates to more traditional history that students are used to. So to what extent does that involve looking at the actual, or confronting the past with the, I suppose, the present day heritage?
It involves confronting everybody's pasts, because everybody's pasts are different, and what is important to them from these pasts also differs. I mean, the people who were fishing and farming in this area were so far away from any big town, they were left alone, and they saw this freedom, it's being a frontier person, as important to their past. That was their heritage. But on the other hand, there's sort of 1/6 of the world's dugongs in the inlets around there. There's hundreds of species that are threatened, sort of in the area. That's also heritage. That's our natural heritage. And, it's a question of looking at the different heritages of these people and seeing, can you find ways in which they can cooperate and coexist?
Oh, I see. I suppose one of the interesting aspects about the heritage industry as well is the way that often heritage is dominated by people who come from outside an area in order to designate it as an area to be protected or to remembered or idealised in a certain way.
Yeah, this is, I think, becoming increasingly important, because the heritage industry is, if you like, run from above. That you have sort of people who will designate a national park, who will make this area national trust, and these are national, or even in the case of World Heritage, international bodies. But locally you've got people living their lives, and the way they live their lives is quite possibly not congruent with what the National Trust or the UNESCO thinks they want to protect. And the idea that you have a heritage from below, that there are industrial working class heritages, there are, where I come from, there are indigenous heritages, Aboriginal heritages, which have got totally different value systems from these outside, if you like, organisations.
I see. I suppose as well, Roy, because you're originally from the UK, and you've been in Australia a long time. I suppose there's this aspect of coming from the outside, even though you're probably I don't know if you regard yourself more Australian than British now, or?
I make the classic compromise. I support the English cricket team and the Australian football team. But the interesting thing is that in one level it makes you an outsider in both countries. I've been working for over 40 years in Australian universities, and therefore when I come back and look at Britain, where there has been a huge growth in the heritage industry, conservation, preservation, over the 40 years where I've been sort of just coming back and visiting. But also in Australia, I'm still in a way looking at it as an immigrant, which is what I was, and adapting gradually to a totally different environment. You know, it's far emptier. It's got a population that is far more diverse. Over half the people in the city I live in are either born overseas or the child of somebody born overseas. You know, all of these issues give you, if you like, a viewpoint from where you came from to look at where you've arrived. And I think that there is a value in being given this sort of semi-detached perspective, that if you're totally involved in a community, it is very hard to step back and say, okay, we've got, sort of pastoralists and farmers and conservationists fighting here. Yeah. If you're in the middle of that fight, it's very hard to try and work out a way to stop it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just sort of say one final thing, or ask you about one aspect. A lot of students will be kind of, particularly history students, I would imagine, would be perhaps a bit nervous about the concept of history and geography combining. How would you explain that to a student without kind of putting them off the idea?
The shortest way, and I can't get the quote absolutely right, was written in A History of Virginia from the 18th century, which says that geography without history is like a carcass without motion, and history without geography is like a vagrant without a habitation, which means that unless you've got history driving change, geography just sits there, name this river. But it equally works the other way. Unless you've got history, in a way, grounded in a place. And I think this is where, both historians and geographers have got a tremendous potential advantage in studying how places change. And I get the impression from the people I'm working with here at the University of Gloucestershire that this is something that they're particularly involved with, and that this means that a history student here is going to be looking at the world in a way that is not just detaching the history as something that you read about. It's just like detaching the geography as something like, where is River X? They're looking at it, sort of on the ground and over time, so that they can understand the processes and hopefully do something positive about it.
Okay, well, I think that's a perfect explanation. Thanks very much.